Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister. Please put your questions in the chat together with your outlet. I've just got a couple of items to share with you before we get to your questions. Firstly, on fallen soldiers, another gut-wrenching morning as we woke to the tragic news of fallen Israeli soldiers. IDF casualties since the start of this war have unfortunately risen to 739. In Gaza, Master Sergeant in the reserves Uri Moshe Borenstein was 32 years old and from Moreshet. He fell in battle in northern Gaza. Major in the reserves Netanel Hershkovitz was 37 years old and from Jerusalem. He too fell in battle in northern Gaza. Master Sergeant in the reserves Tzvi Matityahu Marantz was 32 years old and from Bnei Adam. He fell in battle in northern Gaza. And First Sergeant Itai Fogel was 22 years old and from Yakir. He fell in battle in southern Gaza. Now to last night's deadly drone attack from Hezbollah. Sergeant Omri Tamari was 19 years old and from Maskeret Batya. Sergeant Yoav Agmon was 19 years old and from Binyamina Givat Eda. Sergeant Yosef Haib was 19 years old and from the Bedouin town of Tuba Zangaria. And Sergeant Amitai Alon was 19 years old from Ramat Naftali. All four of these 19-year-old young soldiers were in training to be Golani infantrymen. All four were killed by Hezbollah's deadly UAVs. Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi, visiting the site of the attack, said that we are at war and an attack on a training base behind our front lines is particularly painful and difficult. The Chief of Staff praised the first responders saving the lives of many and evacuating the wounded. We remember the heroes who fell in battle in Gaza and Lebanon and in other sectors. Thanks to them, we have turned the enemy back and destroyed much of their capabilities and freed many of our hostages, but we are determined to complete the work. We send a prayer for the well-being of our wounded heroes, and we are grateful from the depths of our heart for the heroism of our fighting men and women of the IDF and the security services. May their memories be a blessing forever. So this deadly attack was the work of the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, as was the drone attack on the evening of Yom Kippur on Friday night in Herzliya, which targeted an old age home looking after our most vulnerable citizens. Let me make this clear. Israel will not tolerate the existence of a terrorist military on our northern border intent on invading our country with another October the 7th massacre. In the last hour, the IDF has released details of the successful elimination in the area of Nabatia of the terrorist Mohammed Kamel Naim, commander of Hezbollah's Radwan Forces anti-tank missile unit. He led planning and executing terrorist attacks, including anti-tank missile attacks against our civilians. Next on UNIFIL, the Prime Minister yesterday called on UN Secretary General to withdraw UNIFIL from the Hezbollah strongholds in southern Lebanon. UNIFIL's deployment has been an utter failure, unfortunately, since 2006. Under the watchful eye, we wish, of these so-called peacekeepers, again, we wish they were peacekeepers. Since October the 8th last year, the Hezbollah terror organization has been attacking Israel without any provocation. 13,000 incessant firing of rockets, missiles and drones. Why? To kill Israelis, to impose terror and disrupt the daily life here in Israel. So UNIFIL's refusal to redeploy endangers both the UN and Israeli soldiers. Our defence minister has made clear that all the while Israel will maintain coordination with UNIFIL. The Prime Minister's made clear that that their deployment was not fit for purpose in implementing UN Resolution 1701. They had not kept Hezbollah from our border. In fact, the opposite. Hezbollah has embedded more tunnels, more arms, more weapons right under their noses, sometimes within eyeshot, sometimes under 100 meters away. The IDF actually cites 25 cases where attacks on Israel came from close by UNIFIL positions. Next, on the THAAD deployment, Israel welcomes the deployment of the THAAD, THAAD missile defense system. It shows in deeds, not only in words, how our ally in the US is willing to support Israel's defense from Iran. And finally, an update from COGAT and their work coordinating aid into Gaza. The second round of polio vaccination campaign for children across Gaza began today in coordination with UNICEF and the World Health Organization. Since the outbreak of the war, we've facilitated the establishment of 14 field hospitals in Gaza, the entry of 2,706 trucks carrying 27,000 tons of medical supplies, the delivery of vaccines to prevent other diseases and epidemics, and the rotation of international medical teams. A convoy of 30 trucks entered Gaza directly through Gate 96 yesterday, and the trucks carried food, hygiene products, and medical equipment. We continuously urge the UN aid agencies to coordinate more trucks for entry through Gate 96, and you can get all the details of Israel's humanitarian efforts on COGAT's website. So that's the end of our briefing here today. Please put your questions in the chat together with your outlet, please. First question here is from Mark Weiss at Khan Israel Radio. And you write here that the IDF wants to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. Why is it asking Lebanese citizens to move north of the Alawi River and not the Litani? Thank you for that question, Mark. All questions like this probably best to put directly to the IDF. But let me tell you, Israel has done more than any military in the history of armed conflict to move civilians out of harm's way. And many Lebanese have indeed said that they have indeed heeded the warnings of the IDF, which have come on the radio, on the internet, with leaflets, with thousands and thousands of telephone calls and text messages in every way possible to move civilians out of harm's way. Our representative in the United Nations, Danny Danon, has made clear, as has the government, that Israel has no territorial ambitions whatsoever in Lebanon. Our war is directly against Hezbollah, not against the Lebanese people. So if the IDF are issuing instructions to save civilian lives, to move them out of harm's way, then it would do well for the civilians to heed that advice, and of course many of them are. It would also be very important for Hezbollah not to stop civilians from escaping for their lives, so that we can get on with the job of removing Hezbollah from our northern border to allow peace to return to this region. Next question here is from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. Is it true, as reported, that President Biden requested Israel refrain from attacks on Hezbollah in Beirut? Thank you for that question, Joel. I haven't got any update on that. If you want to get news from President Biden, the White House would be the best place for that. What is Israel? Your next question is, what is Israel's position to UNIFIL? Has it been helpful at all? Thank you for that question on UNIFIL. So we've made very clear, and the Prime Minister made quite clear in English and in Hebrew, that he was asking for UNIFIL to move northwards at least 5 kilometers to ensure that it was out of the battle zone. Because right now, Hezbollah are using UNIFIL as a human shield. And our battle, of course, is not against UNIFIL. UNIFIL's when you're talking about UNIFIL's role, UNIFIL had a key role key role after the end of the 2006 war, because the end of that war was on the premise, as 1701 makes very, very clear, that Hezbollah was not to be present and armed and present between the area of our northern border, southern Lebanon, up to the Litani River. It's clear that in that function, UNIFIL has failed miserably. The wide array of weapons, of missiles, of advanced weapons, ready to fire at a moment's notice, that Israel has already exposed. The footage, which you can see on the IDF websites, points to the abject failure of UNIFIL's role in supposing to be a peacekeeping force. We would have loved it to have been effective as a peacekeeping force. Unfortunately, right under their noses, it seems that Hezbollah has built these tunnels and deployed weapons and missiles, and very complex missiles, as the IDF have shown, pointed at us. We've received 13,000 of these UAVs, these missiles and these drones and rockets on our northern community. And that, unfortunately, has pointed to the failure of the UNIFIL force. But the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister just now actually has made very clear that all the while we are maintaining cooperation and communications together with UNIFIL, because it is certainly, we want to keep them out of harm's way as well. But in terms of their role as keeping peace on the border, they have allowed Hezbollah to rearm, to deploy their weapons and to threaten us. For the last year, since October the 8th, they have threatened us incessantly with rocket fire. Next question, was the US THAAD missile defense system requested by Israel, or was it offered by the US? Thank you for that question, Joel. I made clear in the briefing just now that the deployment of this anti-Iranian missile defense system, which operates at very, very high levels in the stratosphere, very, very high levels, to be able to counter the Iranian threat, is proof, if anyone needed it, in deed, not just in words, of what the US calls its ironclad commitment to the defense of this country. We are very grateful in this country. We always say that we share so many of the same values, but we share the same enemies as well here. And that's Iran. Iran are seeking to obtain nuclear weapons with the sole purpose of destroying this country right here. They say it, we believe it when they say it. But they won't stop here. We're just in their neighborhood. They will go further afield, including to the US, including to Europe, including to other places as well, which means that Israel's success here is the international community's success as well in deterring Iran. And you ask a fourth question here. What is the IDF's specific mission in northern Gaza? Thank you for that question, Joel. We've made our war aims crystal clear. It's to ensure that Hamas is not able to threaten this country militarily or its governing structure, to destroy Hamas, its governing structure and its military operation. We're being threatened by Hamas forces which are seeking to redeploy, to reform themselves. Its last battalion and stragglers left from the rest of Hamas that we've shattered. It's seeking to deploy itself in the north of Gaza. We've received mortar fire from the north of Gaza, which means that this threat to Israel must be eliminated, and it will be eliminated, all the while going to our very impressive lengths to get civilians out of harm's way. Next question is from Kazra Naji from BBC's Persian TV. BBC's Persian. Why is Israel's response to Iran's missile attack taken so long to come? What is holding Israel? And will it come after the THAAD system is up and running? Thank you for that question, Kazra Naji from BBC Persian. Look, Iran has threatened this country both last Tuesday, about almost 2 weeks ago, with 101 ballistic missiles, one of the largest ballistic missile attacks of any country anywhere was received by this country, successfully defended against by this country together with our allies, but also in April as well. So look, we've got the responsibility and the right to defend ourselves, and that's precisely what we will be doing. Now, the defense against Iranian aggression, the Prime Minister's made very clear that twice now they've launched hundreds of missiles against us. As I said, one of the largest ballistic missile attacks in history. Kazra, no state in the world would tolerate such an attack against our cities and our citizens. And this Iranian axis of evil, they say very clearly their intentions to destroy the state of Israel, and they're operating towards that end. And they formed a stranglehold against this country. I hope you show this in Persian on BBC. Let's see if you do. It's a ring of armed terror armies. It's Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's Hamas in Gaza, it's Houthis in Yemen, and other militias. Israel is on high alert, and we will exact a heavy price for any aggression against this country from any arena. Now, our Minister, Ron Dermer for Strategic Affairs, has said very clearly that it is not our intention to create a war between Iran. We know that the Iranian regime subjugates its people. We know that between 70 to 80% of the Iranian population is against their regime. We know that when the Prime Minister directed his appeal directly to the people of Iran, not the regime, not the unpopular regime that hangs gays in the streets, that executes women for not covering their hair sufficiently, that is ruthless and suppresses freedom in its own country, not against the people, but against the regime itself. We do not wish for a war, but the Iran having its ability to threaten this country, suppressing their nuclear program, which they say is for the destruction of this country. No other country would accept that threat, and this country will be no exception. You'll just have to wait to see what happens, Kazra. Okay, that's the last question here. So thank you for joining us today. We'll have our next briefing at the same time tomorrow. In the meantime, do please stay safe, and thank you for joining us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Djobnik signing off.